Memo Grosso here, creator of Xenoplicity and the Q system it runs on. Today's video, a short little rant on just some things in the hobby that really grind my gears, that really upset me and frustrate me. Top of the list here is safety tools. I understand there's just been this big push over the last couple of years to implement safety tools in the hobby, and they come in various forms, whether it's consent forms or whether it's actual cards that are put on the table for players to object to things in the game. Here's the thing, guys, and I really want you to listen to this. Anyone out there that struggles with this issue, it is a game. It is a game. It is not real life. It is a fictional game. It is a game of play pretend. It is the equivalent to Monopoly or Uno or chess, okay? You do not need safety tools for a board game, a card game, or a theater of the mind game. No matter how you play a tabletop game, they do not require safety tools. The very fact that you have sat down at the table, that is your consent. That is your consent. If you don't like it at any time, you can get up from said table and leave the game. That is your consent. So if you're at the table playing the game, you are consenting to playing the game because no one has put a gun to your head and forced you to sit at the table and play the game. If they did, then that's kidnapping. That's a whole nother issue. But that is not the case. The case is that you have free will. You can get up at any time. If there's anything you think is inappropriate, you do not need a safety card or a consent form at the table. And this is something that people in the hobby really need to start fighting against. They really need to start pushing back against this, because where these things start to get normalized, at a certain point, we lose the hobby. At a certain point, you just keep giving them inch after inch until they've taken all the ground, okay? So it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Do not let this happen. You guys have to stand up and say, no, that is a stupid idea. You have to call out stupid ideas for being stupid ideas. And you have to call them out, and you have to shame them for even expecting you to play ball in such a ridiculous fashion. Don't play around with these ideas. Don't even try to adopt them. Any game that implements them is a bad game. Stay away from it, okay? There's no reason for it. It is an asinine thing, because what you're doing is you're conflating reality with fiction, okay? If I'm reading a novel, it doesn't matter what's in the novel. I don't need a safety card to pause my novel reading because I might become triggered or I might lose my emotional baggage. If reading a novel or playing a game, if that is something you struggle with because it is causing you some kind of real world stress, you need to seek professional help. You are not a stable adult, or more likely, you need to just grow a thicker skin. And you need to start acting like an adult, okay? Because that's the key to it, is act like an adult, understand that words cannot hurt you. They are just words, and don't lose your whole cool or your whole, don't lose your attitude, don't lose your cool just because someone says or does something that you don't like, okay? Grow up. Another thing that really grinds my gears in the hobby is this idea of the virtual tabletops. They've become very popular really ever since COVID. But even before then, there were a lot of games were being played on some kind of a service like a Zoom or Skype or whatever. And admittedly, I've used things in the past, a long time ago, for running a game at a distance when I was out of town and I wanted to still play with my friends. So I don't think it's bad to have this as a tool for groups that maybe are separated by distance and they have no other way to play. Maybe everybody's sick and so no one can get together in person just to make sure everyone stays healthy. I understand that there are situations where online play can make a lot of sense and can be a useful tool, but they should be the exception. They should be the rare exception to the general rule that you play this game with people in real life at a real table, that you can drive over to their house and actually visit them. And the reason why I say that is because so much of this hobby is based on the social interaction between the people at the table. And you lose something when it's done through a computer screen. It's difficult. There's technical issues that can come up, whether a lag in the internet connection, spotty receptions where you don't quite hear what's being said. It can take you out of the immersive experience that you would get at a table with your actual friends. If you're talking to them in person, there's just some nuance there that gets lost in translation. It's just, this is not a good hobby to try to port over into the digital realm. If I wanted to play a game on my computer, I would play a video game. I don't want to play a virtual tabletop, especially if that virtual tabletop has things in there that I have to interact with on the computer, where I stop role-playing with my friends and I have to now engage with a keyboard. I have to engage with something like on a screen, whether it's moving a figurine on a digital map or whether it's updating a character sheet in a digital world. I don't want to mess with any of that. And you might say, well, Matt, that's just you being old-fashioned because your piece of paper, that's no different. Updating something on your piece of paper on a character sheet in real life is no different than updating it on the computer. Moving a piece on a board on your actual table is no different than moving a piece on a digital screen. And on some level, you are correct. You're right. They're just different mediums, but it's accomplishing the same thing. I get it. But it is not a video game. It is a tabletop role-playing game. So the focus is people at an actual table role-playing. That's the key. It's in the name of the game, okay? It is not a virtual game. It is a game that you play in real life with people that you can actually tangibly touch and see and feel. And not that you will touch or feel them during the game. That would get weird. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that innovation is not always a positive. There are some aspects of this hobby where if you strip it too much away from what its initial thing is, it ceases to be that thing, okay? A board game and a video game are different. Okay, and you might say, well, what's the difference? What's the difference? A board game and a video game, they're very similar. You're right. In some ways they are. They're both games, right? And there's a board, whether it's on a screen or on an actual table. But playing Monopoly at your real life table at home with your family is different than playing some kind of digital video game Monopoly online with strangers. And there's just a fundamental difference to it. And you need to understand that those things exist separately for a reason. Now, if you want to create a virtual tabletop experience, and you want it to be a virtual role-playing game, create a new hobby. Create a whole new pocket, a whole new subsection of the hobby where that's all it is, and don't try to, incorporate and usurp the actual hobby, right? I'm totally okay with virtual tabletops existing for their own thing, and for a virtual game experience being its own hobby, being its own thing. I am not okay with everything trying to be converted and moved over to the digital space. There's a point where, again, if we keep letting them take an inch, eventually the hobby dies because what it once was no longer exists in any form. And you might say, well, you're being an alarmist on this, and that's taking it to an extreme, and no one's calling for that. But here's the thing. Eventually, if you get enough people to convert over, then you have people ceasing to want to play it the old way. And then the hobby dies because inevitably anything you can do on a virtual tabletop will not be as engaging and fun as an actual video game would be. Okay? If I want to play a video game, I will play a video game. There are great video games out there that are in the RPG kind of category. Those are where I'm going to go if that's what I want to do. If I want to turn on my computer, if I want to load up something and play something in front of a keyboard, there are lots of great games to do that. Okay, when I'm getting together with my friends to play my tabletop games, that's not the experience I'm going for. Okay, it's a different hobby. It's a different experience. And so we need to stop trying to merge these things into one large conglomerate. It doesn't need to happen that way, okay? Just keep the tabletop games tabletop, but stop trying to make everyone who plays the game at the table now play it online. And really, I guess I'm speaking mostly to WOTC on this. Not that they care what I think, but I hope they go down in flames. I hope they burn up. I hope that D&D collapses. I hope it all falls apart in their face. I hope they lose millions upon billions from all this investing into this new type of the hobby. Because to me, it shows a gross misunderstanding of even what the hobby is. It shows a lack of respect for what the game is supposed to be. No matter how much you want to say that it's immersive playing online, it's just not as immersive as if they're really in front of me at my own table. Okay. And so I disagree with this whole concept of that this is the way gaming is going. Call me old fashioned all you want. But I don't think I'm wrong on this. And I think 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, if the hobby is still existing, it's still going to exist as people sitting around a table playing it in person. We're not going to lose that, because if you're going to lose that, then the hobby's dead anyway. You've lost the essence, the spirit of what makes it what it is. Okay. If I change a car enough so where it no longer resembles a car, then it's no longer a car. Okay. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say there. The final topic I want to talk about, something that really grinds my gears and really frustrates me, is the idea of people getting into this big hang up between, what's the right way to role play? Do I use, a grid and minis? Do I use theater of the mind? Which is better? Both are equally good, especially for different games. Not all games work equally well with both methods. There are some games that are better suited for grid and minis than they are for theater of the mind. And there are some games where theater of the mind is absolutely preferred. A good example, Fantasy Trip, a game I've talked about several times. That game is designed to work with a grid, a map, and miniatures. And while you could do it theater of the mind, you are not going to be able to appreciate that game for what it is if you are not using the grid and minis, because there are like rules in there for flanking. There are rules in there for your side and your back, penalties that kind of come into that. There are rules in there for moving, certain amount of MA, movement allowance, meaning in the game, we're talking about spaces on a map. So you need that visual representation to fully appreciate and have fun with that game system the way that it's set up. Various versions of D&D worked well or not so well with one or the other approach. I would argue that older editions of D&D probably work better in theater of the mind than more modern ones do. But that's a little subjective. You can play either way with D&D. I've done it either way, and that it's worked okay both ways. Although some editions have been, they're more focused on the miniatures and the map. Something like 4th edition, I think you would always play it with the grid and minis. But then there's other games like Traveler, where I would never think to use minis in a map. Even if I had a host of minis that could work for it, I just wouldn't think to do that. It's a game that plays really good in theater of the mind. Same with Vampire the Masquerade. And a lot of other games too that I enjoy are games that would be more theater of the mind. My own game, Xenoplicity, we prefer you to play theater of the mind. You could use grid and minis and a map, but that's not how the game is set up to run. I don't think that either way is wrong. I think that depending on the game system, one is going to work better than the other. Both can be equally fun in different ways. And some players, they prefer the visualization of a map and minis. And then other players, they will tell you that that's a distraction for them. So it really comes down to personal preference, and it comes down to your table, and it comes down to the game you're playing. Some games just do theater of the mind a lot better than other games do, and likewise, some games are going to do table and minis better. So no matter how you play, the point is that you have fun with your friends, that you enjoy each other's company, and again, you do that best in person. Okay, guys, those are just some thoughts and opinions that I wanted to share with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below.